Now, one of the principal entertainers on that is our guest today, Lola Falana. Now, Lola is a girl of many talents. She sings, she dances, she does skits in the show.
At 81 years old, Lola Falana finally said the words we all suspected, but never thought we'd hear. The glamorous icon who once lit up Vegas stages has come forward with a confession that rewrites everything we thought we knew. What really happened after the spotlight faded? Why did she disappear at the peak of her fame? And what did she find in the silence that followed? From million-dollar paychecks to hospital beds to healing in ways no one expected. This is Lola's final performance, and it's her most powerful yet. Stay with us, because the truth is even deeper than the myth. The showgirl who became a legend. At the height of her fame, Lola Falana wasn't just a name. You felt her. She was energy wrapped in elegance, a showgirl with the spirit of a storm and the soul of a star. In the velvet-draped casinos of Las Vegas, where fortunes were made and lives forgotten, Lola shined, and she stayed. They called her the Queen of Glamour, and when she stepped on stage, you knew why. Her silhouette alone could quiet a crowd. By the mid-1970s, she was earning an astonishing $100,000 a week. Not per month, per week. That kind of money was reserved for the biggest and the boldest. And she was both. She danced like her bones were made of jazz, and her blood ran with rhythm. Every flick of her wrist was choreography. Every gaze, a spotlight. She sang in velvet tones that wrapped around you like silk soaked in fire. She didn't perform. She electrified. In sequins and feathers, she looked like a vision, but her moves had heat. She could drop into a split with the grace of a ballerina, then snap into a fierce samba like the floor owed her something. The press called her the Black Venus, and audiences didn't just cheer, they worshipped. She was glamour and grit in the same breath, said one Vegas promoter. She was what the spotlight wanted, what it needed. But behind the feathers and the fire, there was something else. A woman carrying more than rhinestones. A woman who had come from far away, and who, despite the money and the power, hadn't left all of herself behind. Because no legend is born under the lights. They're born in the shadows first. And Lola's beginning? It wasn't in a theater. It was in the streets of Camden. From Camden choirs to Vegas curtains. Lola Falana was born in Camden, New Jersey, in 1942, a city with cracked sidewalks and strong roots. Her father was a Cuban dock worker. Her mother, an Italian-American seamstress. They worked hard. They prayed harder. There were no dance studios, no agents, just dreams. Lola's first audience was a Sunday congregation. Her first stage? The alley behind her row house, where she'd dance beneath flickering street lamps. While other kids played stickball, Lola danced in silence, chasing something she couldn't yet name. At just 16, fate found her. Jazz legend Dinah Washington heard her sing and saw something in her eyes. "Baby, you got fire in your voice and gold in your feet," Dinah told her. She took Lola under her wing, gave her her first real shot. By 18, Lola had left the streets of Camden behind and was standing under Broadway lights. Not in the chorus, as a star. She was cast in Golden Boy opposite the legendary Sammy Davis Jr. Her rise wasn't a slow climb, it was a rocket launch. Most people struggle for years to get their shot, one Broadway producer said. Lola showed up and owned it. She didn't audition. She arrived. But with stardom came entanglement. Sammy wasn't just her co-star. He became her mentor, her lover, and, eventually, her challenge. What started as a fairy tale would become one of the most complicated chapters of her life. The Sammy Davis Jr. Years, stardom, and shadows. When Sammy Davis Jr. brought Lola into his world, it was electric. Together, they were a spectacle. magnetic on stage, intoxicating in tabloids. He cast her in his shows, took her on tour, called her his muse. To the world, they were a dream pairing, the ultimate showman and his dazzling protege. But behind the curtain, the dynamic was more complicated. Sammy was generous, no doubt. He opened doors she may never have walked through otherwise, but he was also intense, mercurial, controlling, and haunted by his own demons. And in his shadow, Lola sometimes disappeared. He helped me rise, she admitted years later. But I had to fight to be seen. The lines between love, mentorship, and power blurred. Whispers followed them from coast to coast. Whispers about control, about ownership, about a young woman dimming her own light to stay in his orbit. Eventually, Lola made the boldest move of her life. She left. Not just the man, but the empire. She walked away from Sammy's stage, Sammy's spotlight, and Sammy's grip. It was dangerous, risky, scandalous even, but it was also liberating. Sometimes, she said, to find your own light, you have to step out of someone else's. Hollywood didn't know what to make of it, but Lola knew exactly who she was becoming, and the world was about to see her take center stage on her own terms. The first black face of a major brand. In the early 1970s, Lola Falana didn't just star in shows, she made history. She became the first black woman to represent Fabergé's luxurious Tigress perfume. To some, it was just an ad campaign. To millions, it was a revolution. Her face, elegant, bold, unbothered, was splashed across magazine covers, billboards, and TV screens. A black woman, not as a stereotype, not as a sidekick, but as the epitome of desire and sophistication. You saw her and thought, elegance, confidence, power, said one former Fabergé exec. She made you want to be fierce. It was bigger than perfume. It was about visibility. Lola stood in a space no one before her had occupied. And she didn't just stand, she owned it. Still, there was pressure. Every shoot had to be perfect. Every pose polished. They wanted the sparkle, not the struggle, Lola once said. Behind the flawless images was a woman constantly calculating how to stay ahead, how to be enough in a world that rarely gave second chances to women who looked like her. But she did it, with grace, with grit, with fire. And she was only getting started. Hollywood and Vegas were calling again. But this time, she wouldn't just perform. She'd become one of the highest-paid entertainers in America. Hollywood, Vegas, and the million-dollar stage. By the mid-70s, Lola Falana was on top of the world. Not just a celebrity, but an icon. She conquered Hollywood, television, and the Las Vegas Strip all at once. No one could touch her. She starred in films like The Liberation of L.B. Jones, made audiences laugh on The Flip Wilson Show, and crooned alongside Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. But Vegas? Vegas was hers. Her name lit up casino marquees in gold. Her posters promised magic, and she delivered. Dressed in diamonds and backed by 20-piece orchestras, Lola didn't walk onto stage. She reigned. She wasn't just performing for fun anymore. She was pulling in $1 million a year. That kind of money was reserved for the Rat Pack and royalty. And here she was, a black woman, commanding that paycheck, every penny earned through sheer brilliance. Even Frank Sinatra tipped his hat. Lola's got that rare thing, he said. She doesn't just perform, she owns the room. But while the world was dazzled, Lola was unraveling. I could make a room roar, she later said, but I'd go home to silence. She kept dancing, kept dazzling, but something inside her was cracking. The loneliness, the exhaustion, the weight of always being perfect. And one day, her body said no more. Without warning, Lola disappeared from the spotlight. What happened next would change everything and redefine what strength really looked like. Disappearing at the peak, 1987, and the diagnosis. In 1987, at the age of 45, Lola Falana vanished from the spotlight without warning. No headlines, no tearful farewell on talk shows. One day, she was rehearsing for a performance, limber, radiant, seemingly untouchable. The next, she collapsed in her Las Vegas home. A sudden, violent seizure. No buildup. No explanation. Doctors ran tests. Then came the diagnosis: multiple sclerosis. Chronic. Incurable. A condition that slowly strips the body of control. For someone like Lola, whose every movement had once brought audiences to their feet, it was a brutal betrayal. Her muscles weakened. Her coordination began to fail. Her once flawless control, gone. "I didn't understand it," she later said. "One day I could dance. The next, I couldn't hold a spoon." There was no press release, no farewell tour, no dramatic curtain call. She just stopped appearing. Her name, once glowing in lights above Vegas casinos, disappeared from marquees. Bookings dried up. The applause faded into silence. Her fans, unaware, wondered where she had gone. But behind closed doors, Lola was facing something she had never encountered before: powerlessness. Her million-dollar earnings turned into mounting medical bills. Her days, once full of makeup chairs and rehearsals, became a cycle of hospital visits, fatigue, and prayer. The entourage vanished. So did many friends. As her body declined, her world grew smaller. She lay in bed, not in sequins, but in hospital gowns. A woman once called the Black Venus, now watching her reflection blur in the mirror. But in that silence, something began to stir, because as her body broke down, her soul began to wake up. She wasn't being erased. She was being transformed. And what came next wasn't a comeback. It was a calling. "I'm not cured, but I'm healed." Her spiritual rebirth. When Lola's career ended, she did what few celebrities ever do. She went inward. No reality shows, no tabloids. Just solitude, suffering, and something sacred beginning to take shape. She stopped chasing answers from specialists and started seeking them from Scripture. Her home became a sanctuary, her Bible, her new script. "I used to rehearse dance steps for hours," she said. "Now, I rehearse peace." She wasn't cured, but something inside her was changing. "I'm not cured," she said, "but I'm healed, in my heart." She described her illness not as a curse, but as a gift. It stripped away the pressure, the image, the demands. What was left? Something real, something divine. Her voice changed, not in pitch, but in purpose. She no longer spoke as Lola the showgirl. She spoke as Lola the servant. She told stories about God instead of Hollywood. She no longer wore sparkle for the spotlight. She radiated something deeper, peace. She let go of who the world expected her to be, and in that surrender, she found strength again. This wasn't about revenge or redemption. She wasn't seeking fame or pity. She was stepping into the truest role of her life, the healer, not the performer. And soon, her private faith would turn into a public mission. Founding Lambs of God, a mission is born. In 1996, Lola Falana officially launched the Lambs of God ministry. It didn't have cameras. It didn't have red carpets. But it had something else: purpose. She traveled to churches, shelters, and prisons, not with a spotlight, but with Scripture. Not with a backup band, but with open arms. "I had to leave the spotlight to find the light inside me," she said. She visited AIDS orphans in Africa. She sat with fellow MS patients, listening more than she spoke. She stood before women in correctional facilities and told them they mattered, that they were seen, that they were loved. She gave away almost everything: designer gowns, jewelry, money, because those things no longer held value for her. Her currency became hope. She hugged me and whispered, "You are seen," recalled one woman at a prison retreat. That moment changed my life. Lola didn't just talk about faith, she lived it. She didn't want followers. She wanted healing. She didn't want a congregation. She wanted connection. This was not a retirement. It was a rebirth. But even in her spiritual work, echoes of the old Lola remained. The presence, the grace, the light. And in time, the world couldn't help but look for her again. Especially the place where it all began, her hometown of Camden, New Jersey. Lola's confession at 81. The truth we all felt. In 2023, after decades of silence, Lola Falana returned to Camden, not as a performer, but as a pilgrim coming home. She wore a crisp white suit, sat in a wheelchair, and held back tears as the city honored her with a spot on the Camden Walk of Fame. It wasn't a performance, it was a confession. "I left the stage to find my soul," she said, "and I never lost it again." Her voice cracked, her hands trembled, but her words, they landed like thunder. She spoke of her years in the dark, how the world forgot her, how she feared she'd disappear without meaning. And then she smiled. "I used to wonder if I'd be remembered. Now I know, being seen by God is enough." The crowd stood in silence. No music, no dancers, just a woman who had nothing left to prove and everything left to give. What we all suspected was true. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was sacred. She hadn't walked away from fame. She had walked into herself. And the woman we thought we lost was finally whole. The beauty that endured beyond the spotlight. Even in a wheelchair, even with gray hair and a body softened by time, Lola Falana still turned heads. But not because of sparkle or sequins. It was something else. Something untouchable. She wore long, flowing dresses now. No glitter, no makeup team. Just stillness, grace, presence. True beauty, she once said, isn't in the mirror. It's in the mirror of your soul. She mentored young artists, not on how to get famous, but on how to stay human. They called her Mother Lola. They didn't come for advice. They came for her peace. She didn't need a stage. She didn't want a comeback. Her life had already spoken, loudly. Her smile had changed. It didn't dazzle, it reassured. Her presence no longer demanded applause. It offered comfort. Her days were slower now, filled with scripture, letters, and quiet mornings. But her legacy, louder than ever. She was still teaching us, still showing us what it meant to glow without gold, to be revered without performance, to age without fear. And maybe, just maybe, her most beautiful chapter was the one that didn't need to be seen, because the spotlight may have faded. But Lola Falana, she never stopped shining. Public, praise, private struggles. In the public eye, Lola Falana became a quiet symbol of strength. She didn't need new albums or biopics to earn admiration. Her mere existence became a source of reverence. Angela Bassett once called her a path paver. Whoopi Goldberg described her as regal without needing to say a word. Even younger stars like Zendaya have cited her image as inspiration. To them, Lola wasn't just a star, she was the original template. But admiration from afar often hides what life really looks like up close. After her illness, Lola lived with far less than she once had. The riches were gone. The royalties faded into memory. There were no agents negotiating her next deal, no stylists selecting gowns for premieres. Her home was modest, quiet, humble, sacred. There were days the power of her past felt worlds away, and yet she never complained, never tried to chase what once was. Instead, she leaned into her faith, her Bible, and the small joys of stillness. A sunrise, a handwritten letter, a visit from a former fan turned friend. She would send me handwritten notes just to encourage me, a gospel singer once said. No cameras, no announcement, just kindness. Publishers offered big money for a tell-all memoir. They wanted details, the romances, the parties, the downfall. But Lola refused every time. Some stories are sacred, she said. They're not for headlines, they're for healing. She chose silence not because she had nothing to say, but because she knew not all truths need an audience. And still, her story wasn't over. In fact, the life she now lived, off-stage, off-screen, might have carried more meaning than anything she ever did under the lights. A life in contrast, then versus now. Once, Lola Falana stood beneath million-dollar chandeliers in hotel suites, wrapped in mink and diamonds, walking through crowds that parted for her presence. Now, she entered churches in a wheelchair, draped in shawls hand-stitched by volunteers. No cameras followed her, but eyes still turned, because her energy hadn't vanished. It had just deepened. She had swapped the roar of the Strip for the hush of prayer halls. Gone were the tuxedoed handlers and velvet ropes, replaced now by quiet hands helping her into pews. Her life had slowed, but it had never grown small. Fame fades, she once said, but peace doesn't. Her hands, once prized for their elegance on stage, now turned pages of scripture. Her voice, once commanding stadiums, now whispered comfort in hospitals and prison outreach groups. She had become something few celebrities dare to be. Still, friends say she never spoke bitterly of the past. She never played the victim. She didn't measure her worth in column inches anymore. She measured it in moments of connection, of clarity. I had it, she told a small congregation once. I tasted it, and I let it go, because there's more life beyond applause. And in that contrast, between showgirl and servant, fame and faith, her story found its deepest power. Because she didn't just transform herself, she redefined what it means to truly live. Remembering the forgotten pioneer. Ask most young stars today who Lola Falana is, and you'll get hesitation, maybe even silence. But if they've ever stood under a spotlight with confidence, wearing couture, commanding attention without apology, they're walking through a door she opened. Lola didn't just break barriers, she obliterated them. She was the first black woman to headline in Las Vegas, the first to front a global luxury brand, the first to prove that beauty, power, and blackness were not contradictions. She made it okay to be glamorous and powerful, said one Vegas showrunner. She was the first time many people saw a black woman owning the stage without permission. And yet, like many pioneers, she was buried under the next wave. Her films disappeared from syndication. Her name was left out of documentaries. Her story wasn't taught. It was tucked away. But her presence, her imprint, still everywhere. In every fragrance ad featuring a woman of color. In every pop star negotiating a multi-million-dollar Vegas residency. In every photo shoot where a black woman is posed not as decoration, but as the centerpiece. Lola's legacy lives in shadows, but it breathes in modern light. And now, while she's still here, it's time to lift her name again. Not in nostalgia, but in gratitude. Because before, there was Beyoncé. Before Rihanna, there was Lola. What Lola taught us about reinvention. Lola Falana didn't fade. She transformed. And that alone makes her story one of the most powerful and overlooked reinventions in entertainment history. Most people only see two versions of a public figure, the rise and the fall. But Lola gave us a third act, one rarely seen, even more rarely understood, a life. After the lights, richer in meaning than anything she ever did under them. She didn't just survive the entertainment industry, she transcended it. She exited a world that demands eternal youth, relentless perfection, and unyielding relevance, and instead found a peace and purpose that can't be measured in ratings or residuals. Her journey wasn't clean. It wasn't a straight line. It bent and twisted, paused and restarted. She had peaks so high few have touched them. Broadway, Vegas, films, million-dollar contracts. But when her health collapsed, so did the career she had built with her body, her beauty, and her sheer will. And that could have been the end of the story. But it wasn't. "I thought losing my body meant losing my purpose," she once admitted. "But I didn't know purpose could shift." Lola discovered something that most people never do. You are not your job. You are not your talent. You are not your image. Purpose can evolve. Identity can expand. And the greatest applause doesn't always come from a crowd. It sometimes comes in silence, from within. In her stillness, she revealed a truth most of us are too afraid to face, that what the world sees as the end might actually be the beginning of the real story. She didn't cling to fame. She let it go. Like a bird she'd kept in her hand as for too long. And when she did, something even more beautiful took flight. She showed us that aging isn't failure. It's transformation. That illness isn't the end. It's sacred redirection. That walking away from the spotlight isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. In an industry obsessed with relevance, Lola didn't just slip into the shadows. She owned her invisibility. She made it holy. She turned it into a mission, into ministry, into mentorship, into medicine for those who needed something real. She became a quiet mentor to artists, not for how to market themselves, but for how to survive themselves, how to endure without becoming hardened, how to grow old without becoming bitter, how to live in truth without needing to be seen. She didn't just stage a comeback. She didn't even want one. She rewrote the entire play. A life not of return, but of renewal. Now, at 81, she doesn't shimmer the way she used to. She radiates. And what she radiates isn't applause. It's presence. She became a lighthouse, a signal for anyone lost in the fog of celebrity, drifting between who they are and who they pretend to be. And in that light, we saw what true reinvention looks like. Not desperate, not performative, but sacred, quiet, brave. Lola Falana didn't just teach us how to shine. She taught us how to surrender, how to rise, and how to begin again. A life beyond applause. There will be no glittering farewell for Lola Falana. No Netflix documentary. No star-studded tribute concert. That's not how she chose to leave the stage. Her goodbye came quietly, in whispered prayers, in handwritten notes, in lives she touched when no one else was looking. Her final confession said it all. I had it all. I gave it away. And now I finally have peace. It wasn't regret, it was release. In a culture obsessed with image, Lola found meaning in modesty. In a world addicted to comebacks, she chose completion. Her story is not a classic rise and fall. It's a sacred evolution. A woman who mastered fame and then mastered the art of letting go. She gave us sequins, yes, but also silence. Glamour, yes, but also grace. We remember the standing ovations, the magazine covers, the thunderous applause. But what we honor is the quiet, the wisdom, the stillness she chose when the lights went out. Her final bow didn't come with roses. It came with reverence. And what we all suspected from the beginning has now been confirmed. Lola Falana's greatest performance wasn't on stage. It was the life she lived after the curtain fell. And that was her final, flawless bow. Lola Falana didn't vanish. She transformed. From showgirl to spiritual icon, her story is one of grace, courage, and quiet power. If this moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Thank you for watching. We honor legends like Lola by keeping their truth alive together.